So, good afternoon from Ireland. Good morning to you in the States. And welcome back to the Handshake, which was maybe the original connection we had made. The handshake having everything to do with the importance of collaboration, connection, reaching out and working together. So welcome back, Dr. Brian and Sasha. And we are today introducing this super STEAM team training. Okay. So I suppose by way of introduction, my name is Teresa Hand-Campbell. I'm an educator of 35 years in leadership roles in education. And in the last 10 years, I work as an organizational psychologist, business executive coach, mediator, and psychometric test user with the British and Irish Psychological Societies. I met Brian through asking the hard questions, what legacy are we leaving our young, during the COVID period, and then we came back with the Handshake, my podcast that I've been running now for the guts of a year. So I'm thrilled to introduce you to this innovative educational framework that's transforming how we think about student development and intergenerational collaboration. So what we'll be exploring today is grounded in solid academic research. Let me introduce first Dr. Brian, a distinguished professor from the Appalachian State University, published a scholarly article in the Journal of Education titled HTO Centered Education, Helping Education Excellence Flow More Freely. This research has now been translated into an accessible children's book titled Super STEAM Team, a hero-directed tour through the principles of productivity, designed for young learners aged 6 to 12. So that would be the primary sector here in Ireland. So we're also joined today by Sasha Monaco, first author of Super STEAM Team, a hero-directed tour through the principles of productivity. And Sasha is pursuing a doctorate in clinical psychology and was introduced to Brian by Dr. Martin Haystaker at the University of Florida. So the STEAM framework, you might wonder, right, how do we put that in a nutshell just to introduce it to our listeners who have been maybe hopefully honing in on this podcast later on? At the heart of this approach are 5 key factors that have been scientifically shown to predict goal success. S standing for the social support, T standing for the time perception, E for enjoyment, A for accessibility, and M for motivation. Together, these elements form the STEAM framework, a practical system for helping children navigate what Dr. Higley calls frenzy fog. Now, what's frenzy fog, you might ask? Well, it's that state of confusion and lack of clarity many young people experience when trying to manage tasks and responsibilities. And what's more, it takes a multi-generational approach. What makes this program particularly powerful is its collaborative structure. A key aspect of Dr. Higley's initiative involves high school teachers working alongside student leadership teams to mentor elementary and middle school students, our STEAM superstars. These mentors, known as STEAM Sidekicks, guide younger learners through engaging, research-based activities designed to help them develop effective self-help practices, skills they can then share with their families and communities. So it goes far beyond individual learning. While the focus may appear to be on individual children, the vision extends much further. As Dr. Higley explains, although the book is written for kids, the project is actually about promoting intergenerational, community-wide connection and cooperation across the entire lifespan in research-based ways. This approach aims to replace unproductive conflicts, like arguments over uncompleted homework, for instance, with collaborative problem solving and agreed upon plans that benefit everybody involved. So during today's training session, Dr. Brian and Sasha will guide us through the principles of H2O-centered education, helping oneself and others. You'll learn practical strategies for implementing the STEAM framework. You will discover how to embody the qualities of the 5 STEAM superheroes, and you will explore ways to foster meaningful collaboration across age groups. So by the end of our time together, you'll have concrete tools to transform flimsy fog into effective teamwork. Whether you're a teacher, counselor, a parent, or a student leader. So without any further delay, please join me in welcoming Dr. Brian and Sasha to lead us through this exciting educational journey. Forgive the long introduction, but it was necessary. So welcome to you both. Welcome, Dr. Brian, and welcome, Sasha.
Thank you so much for having us on today. I'm so excited to be able to start this training for people that are interested in spreading STEAM to children and to adults. Like you said, it's multi-generational, and it takes a village to be able to empower children. And so, yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who is watching this or referring to this later. I know that we're going to be having some kind of Q&A towards the end. So if you have any questions, you can put them in that Google Doc. But yeah, anything you want to add, Dr. Brian?
No. I'm ready. Want to stay out of your way because I know you're the expert on this, and I'm real excited to take this training with you. So
He's hiding the blushes there. Okay, let's go, Sasha.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen real quick. So I'll start with an explanation of the book. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Perfect.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, and you can still see it? Awesome.
Mhm.
So the STEAM team is a team of superheroes who help children achieve goal activation, mission activation based on what they really want to do. So this can be long-term, like I want to achieve a certain career, or it can be short-term, like I have a book report. So on that note, this is the Super STEAM team, and this is a dual-sided book. So the back side of it is the water workbook, as you can see on the left over here. But in this first part, it's more of a narrative. So the Super STEAM team has this STEAM headquarters where they're able to see what all of the children in the world are working on and what they might need help on. So I just want to show that page real quick. So as you can see, they're able to kind of understand who might need help and where they need to jump in. So the story starts when they find out that a second grader named Oliver is having trouble completing his book report. So in order to introduce you to the STEAM team heroes, I'll kind of give a basic narrative of what happens there. So Oliver is stuck in something called the frenzy fog. So the frenzy fog is when you're not exactly sure exactly what you want your mission to be. And instead of taking steps to define exactly what you want it to be and the aligned actions that have to get you there, you kind of just are stuck. And as you can see, these children are in a frenzy fog, saying things like, I'll just do it tomorrow. I'm just going to play video games instead. And then eventually, middle of the night, oh my gosh, what if I never get it done? So the way I like to think about frenzy fog is if you have a cat or a dog and you have one of those red laser toys that you kind of like bring around the room so that they can run around. It's kind of like that. When you're in a frenzy fog, you don't have an exact direction you want to go in. You're expending a lot of energy and you're not actually getting anything done. So when they actually try to pounce on that red dot, they never really catch it. So we want to help kids escape this. The entire point of this book and this framework, which we defined early on because it's important to define your actions early on, is to help kids build self-trust, because self-trust turns into confidence, which turns into the motivation to actually achieve your goals. So yeah, this multi-generational approach, and that's why I thank you in advance for helping the children. So let's get right into it. This is based off of a training that I did at an elementary school of the arts, and I helped the kids who were actually in a class that is based off of career direction. So some of the examples in this presentation are more broad, they're more long-term, but we started off with looking at exactly what STEAM is. So first, the S in STEAM is social support, and social support is embodied by the social butterfly character. And she likes to fly around and find different people around the world or around the children's lives that can help them. So for instance, Oliver needs help with his book report. And the first step is actually going to the library and buying the book. So he brings his mom along, and he actually can't reach the top shelf that has the book that he wants to get. And so his mom physically reaches the top shelf, which is a form of social support. It shows him celebrating his progress at dinner with his parents. It shows him being cheered along by his sister and actually reading the book at night with his grandma. So instead of this being an individual goal, now it's expanded into a network of support, which is really good for the child emotionally, but also physically getting through the goal and being held accountable during the goal. So next is time. Tommy time, which you'll see in a second, is all about cleaning up your schedule. When you're in a frenzy fog, I'd like to show this one page, which is actually my favorite page of the book. The frenzy fog has you doing all of these activities that are not contributing to your mission activation. I'll read some examples out loud. So unimportant tasks, texting, overthinking, procrastinating, scrolling on social media, watching YouTube. And these aren't activities that you should never do, but they're definitely activities that shouldn't take up a large portion of your day when you have a goal at hand. So Tommy Time is in charge of cleaning up your clock and then helping you break your day into different chunks of time and really putting in a bunch of, productive activities, but also some rewards in there too, which we'll talk about soon. Next is enjoyment, and this is embodied by Enjoy Boy. And he's all about making sure that your mission is as enjoyable as possible. So Oliver picked out a book called The History of Toothpicks to write his book report on. And I don't know if there's anyone in the world that would like to read a book on the history of toothpicks. It's definitely not me. And so Enjoy Boy kind of says, what are you doing? Let's think about what you like to do. And so he does something called an enjoyment scan, which is also part of the training today, helping kids figure out what they enjoy doing. And he finds out that Oliver is very interested in space. And so then he's able to help him find books that are related to space. And now this chunk of time that Tommy Time had set out for Oliver to work on his book report doesn't seem dull or boring anymore. It actually seems exciting. And we'll talk about some ways that you can control aspects of enjoyment even when you're not able to directly pick exactly what you're working on. Next is Andy Access. And Andy Access is all about making sure that you have what you need in front of you and also making sure that there's not distracting aspects in front of you, like, snacks and video games and everything on your desk distracting you from the mission at hand. Again, it's all about using that time wisely. And lastly, we have motivation, which actually is my favorite one and what I deem to be actually the most important one when you're starting off and creating your goals. And this is Motivation Man. And Motivation Man is actually a mind reader. And with your help, he can jump into the minds of the children that you're working with and actually find out why they want to do what they're doing. We all have so much choice as to where we are in life and what we're pursuing. And to understand the motivation behind that kind of puts this like oomph behind your goals. So that is the STEAM team. So to start off, I went out of order in this training and started with Motivation Man because I think that it's important to kind of be able to zoom out on life and understand the child's motivations, which can change at any moment, and that is okay. So the entire point of this is to give the child agency, that they have full control over what they want to do in their lives. So there's a page in this book that reminds me of that board game, the game of life, where there's all these milestones. And so I kind of designed the page this way. And as you can see, this is Oliver's version of this game of life board. So the children were given a blank board and they were able to kind of write out the steps that they at this point knew they wanted. So the children I worked with were in middle school. So they were already in middle school. And the next step for a lot of them was, I'd like to go to high school. Some of them knew what they wanted to focus on in high school. Some of them knew exactly where they wanted to go. And then some of them wanted to go to college next. Some of them had a certain job picked out, especially because I was at an art school for this training. And a lot of them said, I want to continue dancing and become a ballerina, or I want to learn more piano, or, I want to work in communications. And then towards the end of the lifespan, we think about what they really want at the end. Do you want a happy home? Do you want health? Do you want to be focusing on hobbies that you enjoy? Do you want to be around a bunch of family? So Motivation Man really zeroes in on what these children want. And that's a wonderful space to start. Anything to add, Teresa or Brian, before we continue?
The only thing I'll say is I use your beautiful phrase, Sasha, so often when I talk about this book and whenever I meet or train with you, and that is that this is just lighting up my heart. So the only thing I have to say is you continue to light up my heart with this work.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Brian. Yeah, honestly, I love, okay, just for context, Dr. Brian and I say that all the time, pretty much at the end of every email. This is lighting up my heart because it really is. And I can assure you, firsthand, seeing the children use this material, oh my gosh, that was probably the best day of my life. To be able to see them get so excited, and it was such an interactive training, being able to see them get excited to raise their hands and tell me about what they wanted in their lives. And then the feedback that I got at the end was that they were so excited to keep going and to keep tracking this progress. And so it's really important to remember when we talk about motivation, our motivation as a team that is helping children excel, like that motivation will develop over time as you see this actually helping children firsthand. Okay, so going on from
Sasha, real quick, I want to piggyback on what you just said about excitement, which to me relates to enjoy boy. They're both E words and they're both related. This work, one of the reasons why this work lights up my heart so much is I know the research on the association between education and excitement, and how often as kids move through their educational journeys, the excitement part of education gets separated out. And before too long, students who are really excited about going to their first kindergarten class or whatever, they start to, by the time they get to maybe even the end of elementary, middle, certainly by high school, and oftentimes when they come to me in college, they are not excited at all about their educational journey because they haven't had STEAM-centered educational experiences. So this is another reason why this is lighting up my heart, is I want as many people as possible, teachers, students, parents, administrators, mentors, to know how to avoid separating the enjoyment or excitement out from the educational journey. I think this is such important work.
Absolutely. I completely agree. They should be the same thing, education and excitement. And I can tell you firsthand, having not been in high school that long ago or middle school that long ago, the hallways are full of frenzy fog, I'll tell you that. A lot of people don't know why they're there. They're doing it just to, get the degree and move on. And honestly, it's a lot more fun when you're able to know exactly why you're doing it. And so I completely agree. So next is Enjoy Boy. So this is Enjoy Boy. As you can see, he's real excited about looking over to this information about why the children are doing what they're doing. So in the training, the children received a blank version of this, which actually is likely going to be attached to this training, those worksheets. And this was the example that was on the board for them, because Enjoy Boy is all about, like I said, picking things that you enjoy, but also kind of making things that you don't enjoy too much a little bit more enjoyable. And to introduce this topic, I'd like to talk about actually a class that I took at University of Florida it was Positive Psychology, with Dr. Ryan Duffy, and he was brilliant. And one of the things that he told us was that if you break your day into, let's say, like 1 or 2 hour chunks, you could take a highlighter, a red, a green, and a yellow highlighter. And depending on what you're doing at those points in the day, kind of highlight how much green there is, meaning like things I really enjoy, how much yellow there is, like, oh, I kind of enjoy this, it's all right, and how much red there is. Like for me, that would be like taking a calculus class or attending that class. That would not be fun for me. So the idea is to intentionally put as much green in there as you can, and anything that's red to make it a lighter shade of red. For instance, if I do have to go to a calculus class, I would bring a snack that I really like. I would maybe bring my AirPods and listen to music on the break. Whatever personally fits me that I know will make it enjoyable for me. And so that's the kind of the idea of this worksheet. So like I said, this was a career-based training. So I had the children think about things that they enjoy doing, especially because it was an art school. And then they raised their hands, and we, as a group, it was about 25 of us, we all brainstormed different careers that could go into. So that I really saw them start to light up, like, oh, I hear people talk about work and it doesn't seem that exciting, but maybe my work could be exciting. And so the idea, it draws them right back to giving them power, agency, and the trust in themselves to pick something that they enjoy. And then the second half of this worksheet is that kind of like making red into a lighter shade of red part. So if they are doing something that they don't totally enjoy, or maybe if they're doing something that they do enjoy, but they want to make it even more fun, we all brainstormed a list of places that they could work in. So I said that I love my desk at home because it's pink and it's beautiful and it's exactly what I want it to look like. And it has everything I need. It has my water next to me. It's designed exactly how I want it. So, which we'll talk about actually when we talk about anti-access. And then I talked about the park next to my apartment and how it's really fun to work there, a certain coffee shop. And we got really specific. I said, guys, if you had to go study all together right now after school, where would you all want to go? Like, what would be fun for you? And they all started giving me places right next to their school. All of a sudden, they have a way to make their work more enjoyable right in front of them and as a team. And then next, so things that make work feel more fun. So like I said, I love listening to music. We kind of, as a team, even came up with certain music styles. A lot of kids play that game Animal Crossing, and so they were all excited about that because Animal Crossing has an instrumental soundtrack that a lot of people actually sit down and do work to. There's like YouTube videos dedicated to that, so we brainstormed that together. Things like rewards, like the Pomodoro technique, where you work for about 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, and then working next to friends. So again, that social support element. Anything to add on this enjoyment, Dr. Brian?
No, I think you're doing absolutely great. The only thing I want to check in on with you is that we're not seeing any changes on your screen in terms of the images. Oh, perfect. I just wanted to check in with you and
Okay.
make sure. Perfect. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry about that. Okay, so did you guys miss this part?
Yeah, it might be good to just go back over, whatever
Yeah.
is after that first slide, and we can
Okay.
just kind of, oh,
Awesome.
perfect. Yes.
Okay, so
Great.
mentoring with STEAM. This is the frenzy fog, all these poor children in this frenzy fog, not knowing exactly where they're going. And then this is the STEAM acronym. And then Motivation Man, kind of seeing that game of life board, which is included, a blank version is included in the worksheet for the children. And then Enjoy Boy, so things that they enjoy doing, and then related careers that we talked about, and then places that they like to work in and things that they like to do to make it more enjoyable. Thank you so much for letting me know that.
Oh, no, that's great. And I just want to let you know again, heart continued to be lit up on all of these different strategies that so many students, not only elementary students, but I find a lot of college students just haven't been exposed to these kinds of super powerful strategies for keeping Enjoy Boy accessible as they go through their learning experience. This stuff is completely life-changing. Because so many people just don't know these really simple but powerful methods of making sure that their learning journey stays STEAM centered. So I'm just bursting with joy. I really appreciate this work that you're doing here, Sasha.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be a part of it. It's so important. And on that note, it's important to put ourselves in the shoes of the children. Like children are brilliant, and I'll say that every single day of my life for the rest of my life. I really believe that they have such the curiosity that they have, they have a drive and a motivation to grow. There are things that I think adults sometimes tend to lose out on that children really have. And if we empower them, then they can really create something wonderful that they enjoy. And also another way, when you put yourself in a child's shoes, you might kind of feel the confusion or the being pulled in 8 different directions or being told to do something but not knowing exactly why. And so putting power in the hands of the children, that's my motivate. When Motivation Man reads my mind, that's what he sees. I would love to make children feel empowered in that way.
And I'll add real quickly, Sasha, that when we're around children who are in touch with their natural intrinsic motivation to learn, this is something I like to point out to people. Sometimes people get convinced that it's just not their nature to learn, and they forget that from the very first day we're in this world, we are learning sponges. Mm-hmm. And if you want to see whether or not learning is intrinsically enjoyable, just watch kids giggle and laugh and smile when they discover new things. And one of the things I love working with younger people to keep their STEAM and not get separated from their STEAM is it's a constant reminder to me that my nature, just like theirs, is to really enjoy the learning process. It's what we are. We are learning sponges, and sometimes we get dried out and can forget our true nature. So this is just pure gold to me.
I do believe as well that there are key points in children's lives in that learning journey, and if they're not, if they're those moments are not captured, and they're not driven and guided in their enthusiasm, they actually lose interest, and that's when the dry sets in.
And for people who haven't seen some of our previous podcasts, it might be good to remind everybody that DRY is an acronym we use to contrast with H2O. H2O is help to ourselves and others. And this is certainly something that Sasha's doing, providing help to ourselves and others through this work. DRY in our framework is the opposite. It stands for doesn't reward you and me, with you and me being one word that gets across the importance of collaboration in life. And the way I think about that, Teresa, is if we don't keep our kids on a STEAM-centered path throughout their educational journey, we are drying them out. So we are learning sponges that are H2O-centered. Learning sponges are helpful to ourselves and others. We just got to be really careful about drying those precious sponges out.
1000%. Yeah. And I love that because we have the opportunity to we could tell a child this, and part of the training is to tell a child this, like, you're a learning sponge, you take in information, and I'm so proud of you for that. Another way to help them understand that is to show them, to show them that you're also learning and that you're also creating your own goals. So actually, intentionally, a big part of this training when I went to the elementary school was to do the training with them. They had the worksheets all printed out in front of them, and I had one for myself too with my name on it. I had my own little desk, and when I said, okay, let's brainstorm now, I'm going to do it too, I would sit down, I would write my motivations, my goals, and I would start off and tell them mine. And I would just emphasize to them, like, this is a never-ending journey because you're always going to be getting better. So it kind of gives them the motivation that you don't get somewhere and stop. Yeah.
And Sasha, I just wanted to add, when you talked about the power of showing students that you yourself are doing this, I couldn't help but think of Albert Bandura's work on modeling. The most important thing, lots of research on if you say something but don't model it, oftentimes people will follow what you model rather than what you say. So I think you're using both you're walking what you talk, so to speak, and people tend to watch what you walk more than what you talk. So I think it's a brilliant strategy grounded in the research of the power of modeling and how attentive people are to whether or not you're walking your talk. So that's just brilliant.
Yeah, 1000%. I completely agree. And yeah, you bring up a great point. This is also evidence-based. We're not, making this up and saying what sounds good. It's based on like actual research, and that's why I was able to see it be so effective with these children. So yeah, and thank you for bringing the research. That's what powers this entire thing. Okay, so Tommy time. So as we said, Tommy time is all about cleaning up your clock. He comes in, he sees that you're in this frenzy fog, your eyes are swirly, and there's all these things around you that you're doing that are not contributing to your mission. So what he does is he actually physically vacuums the numbers of the clock up in the book, which is a cool visual for the kids to see. And then he replaces it with SMART goals. So a SMART goal is something that's specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and time-bound. So this was really fun to do with the children because they had this code, as you can see up here, where they were able to write their goals and then mark exactly which part of each goal was each part of this acronym. And so I gave this example to them that every Tuesday for the next 2 weeks, read 20 pages of the Big Book of Jobs with Mom, because again, this was a career-centered thing. And so the next 2 weeks was the time-bound part. 20 pages was a realistic amount of pages, and it was measurable. The Big Book of Jobs is specific, because if I had said, read a book about jobs or read a book that makes me smarter, I'm less likely to go pick it up because I don't have it in front of me. And then with Mom, this is the social support agreed upon element that holds me accountable for doing that. So Another thing we practiced was after they wrote their goals, which they actually said that this was their favorite part of the exercise, which is exciting feedback. And after we wrote the goals, we made sure to talk about who would be supporting them in the goals. And a big part of it was their teacher. I actually asked their teacher with a few of the examples. I said, would you be willing to support like Stacy in her goal of reading this amount for that? And she said, absolutely. And you know what? We'll do some research too, and we'll tack on to that goal. So what you find is that adults are excited to help the kids, which is the whole point of this training. And so anything to add, Dr. Brian?
Back to that excitement, and to me, it's related to Enjoy Boy, but also Motivation Man too, because excitement motivates. I think this gets to what Teresa said in the introduction, that this looks like a book just for kids, but you just talked, Sasha, about how exciting this can be for adults and younger mentors, high school mentors. When you're interacting with kids, it can help you yourself. And I know it does for me all the time. Whenever I talk about STEAM-centered education, not only do I see more excitement and enjoyment in my students, I get more excited and I feel more enjoyment. So it looks like a book just for kids, but it's really for all of us. And all of us can, I think, benefit by getting back in touch with our own learning sponginess, because some of us get dried out as we go through education systems and work systems and family systems that may not be STEAM centered. So it's really nice to, I like to say, I get rehydrated every time I do H2O work with younger people, because it's not just about them. It's a reciprocal feedback loop. And I get a jolt of excitement and energy too.
Sasha, what qualities do you look for in students that you would think would be potential mentors?
So mentors, do you mean like high school age mentors?
Yes.
Okay, so I would look for someone who can be authentic about what they've been through. I was just going to add a point about how if I haven't ridden a bike in 20 years, it might be difficult for me to teach a child how to ride a bike because I can't put myself in their shoes about how it might feel to learn that for the first time. So if a mentor is authentic about the fact that they had to learn this too, or that they're still continually learning this, that's something for the child to relate to. Instead of talking down to a child, you're now sitting on the same level with the child, and you're both learning something together. Another would be that they have the buy-in of the mission, because if you don't buy into this mission, it's hard to relay that excitement. It's hard to transfer the emotion of excitement to a child if you're not excited about it yourself. And I think that it almost helps if they have a creative imagination too. Creating this book was what helped me understand STEAM fully. Like I understood the research, I understood the framework, but when I saw the characters, when I saw it actually helping a child in the book, that's what helped me. And there's a page I want to show related to that question. I think I showed it before, but it's actually the STEAM team headquarters. Yeah, so I showed this before. It's the STEAM team headquarters. So if you can actually, if the mentor has, the buy-in and the creativity and the almost like the acting skills to open this book and say, look, they have a database where all these children pop up and they get to help them. Like, you're on this too. Like you have a mission right now and it's popping up on here. Let's go into it. Let's see how they would help you. It's almost like helping the child feel important enough to be the main character of their own story. And so I think that combination really helps children. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Sasha, I can't withhold this. The thing that you just said to me is what is the essence of truly excellent education. Helping people understand that they are the main character in an exciting adventure through the game of life. That just put tingles in my entire body. Beautifully said.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's awesome because it's not just this. We don't just get to watch Oliver go through it. You are the main character when you start this part of the book. That's why I love this book. And that's why, the idea of getting this into classrooms, we could really help children understand their importance. And when children are given attention to their goals, they feel that they're worthy of that attention. And I'll give an example. There was a child in the training who, all the kids kind of clustered together in their own desks. And this child was a little more off to the side, a little bit more quiet, and didn't seem to be fully participating at first. And that's okay. I told them right in the beginning, I said, I was a bit of a shy kid. It wasn't super easy for me to raise my hand in class when I was younger. And so if you say nothing for the entirety of the session today, that's okay. I'm not going to assume that you're not into it or you're not participating. There's nothing wrong with that. And I saw this child wanting to participate, but kind of struggling a little bit. And so whenever we had the time to do it ourselves, I would, do mine, and then I would go over and sit with him and talk about his goals. And he started to light up. And I remember we created a SMART goal together. And then the teacher actually came over to him after I left and said, "Oh my gosh, that's a good one. Let me read that to the class." And to see his smile light up, I could tell that was the moment that buy-in was born there. He really wanted to now go full into the SMART goal and start practicing it. So yeah, I think there's something to be said about helping children feel motivated and important. So yeah. Okay. Now on to Andy Access. So this is Andy Access. Like I said before, she's all about making sure that you have what you need in front of you and that you don't have what you don't need in front of you, something that's going to distract you. So this is part of kind of helping them understand we're all doing this together regardless of our age. So I kind of showed them what my desk looks like when I'm ready to work. So my glasses, my color pencils, so I love to color code things, my laptop, maybe a coffee. And then when I'm not ready to work, I might have like snacks and video games and my iPad to watch TV and my phone to look at my notifications. And so I kind of started this off with them and I said, let's just be super honest with ourselves and each other about what helps us and what doesn't, because we want to help ourselves. This is kind of like, showing yourself that you love and respect yourself because you want to make your work easier for yourself. And so we had a whole brainstorming session and they taught me all kinds of things that I didn't even know existed about what was distracting them or not distracting them. And I saw them get really excited about it. So in the worksheet, there's actually a blank version of this where there's two versions of this desk, and the child can sit down with you and either write or draw what their desk looks like. Something else I want to mention here is when I was younger, my grandmother would say when I was cleaning my room, if you go like this and pretend that you have a camera, like a picture frame, and you do this to every part of the room, does it look picture perfect? And if it does, then you know that you're done. So kind of a technique that you can give to the child is have them do this on their desk. And if they took a picture of it and sent it out to their teacher and said, "I'm ready to work," would the teacher say, "Oh, but your phone's face up on the desk, so maybe you're not that ready to work," or, so it kind of gives a little exercise for them to test themselves on if they're creating the right environment for themselves with Andy Access. Anything else to add before I go on?
I think I will say, this is one of the, just anecdotally, one of the most, I think, overlooked things that seems to really impact people when they start being conscious of it. I can't tell you how many times people say, "Oh my gosh, my whole desk and sometimes my whole room is just cluttered. I've got 50 different tabs up. My phone's dinging all the time, and I never really thought of it." And then once they start making sure they have access to the stuff that's going to help them get what they want, and that they reduce access to the things that distract them, it is life changing. And a lot of people don't think about it until they start doing these kinds of trainings.
1000%. And you bring up a great point that also these superheroes are all friends. They don't exist in isolation. They work together every single day. And so Andy Access might be saying, okay, let's put these things on the side for now. And Enjoy Boy or Motivation Man, who are thinking about rewards, are saying, perfect. We're going to pick those up later because that's going to make them more likely to do the work now. In the same way that Andy Access is saying, oh, we need access to this book to do this book report, Social Butterfly is saying, perfect, let me call mom. She'll take us to the library. So it's an ecosystem that this child is creating for themselves. And the whole idea is getting them to ask themselves the right questions. So yeah. So now this is our last superhero that we haven't met yet. This is Social Butterfly, and she's all about, kind of like I mentioned, finding the right social support systems. And those are incredibly important in the research, not just for motivation or for goal satisfaction, but kind of for pretty much every area of life. They talk about this a lot in therapy, that they'll kind of assess, even a lot of on the assessments that they do clinically, they kind of figure out if you have social support around you, because that's a huge mechanism for holding yourself accountable for change and being strong enough to change. Because it's not always easy to change. It's important to kind of help kids understand that like they might have this framework in their head for how work gets done, and this is a little different. And so having someone to support you is super important. And as the mentors who are watching this right now, learn about this, like it's important to know like you are the social support. So thank you. Like thank you times a million for being the social support for these children. Okay, so getting right into it. So you want to have different options for social support. In the book, I can show this page. Oops, I'm in the workbook. So yeah, in the book, like I said, Oliver kind of needs help going to the library, staying motivated. And so you can see he's reading with his grandmother. He is in the library with his mom. He's having like his mom left him a note. And so he has social support all around him. And it's kind of like a boost. That's why Social Butterfly can fly, because it kind of makes you feel like you can go to new heights when you have that. So as an example, I said that my friend Talia, I wanted her to help me discuss like my progress when I was looking for new opportunities for jobs. And this is really neat because you can circle exactly how often you want this help and what how often per week or month or day. And to go further with it, it would help to discuss with your social support system, what does the support look like? Are we doing like a tough love type of situation? Are we going to be super cushy about it? And oh, you're doing so great. That's personally how I function better. So it's important to know what helps the child. And yeah, so this is in the worksheet for them to do. Anything to add, Dr. Brian?
We've been talking a lot about the education system. And what came to mind as you were talking about Social Butterfly were the two other systems we work in, the family system and the work system. Because the education system oftentimes isn't STEAM centered, people oftentimes go into the work system without social support skills. Teresa, I think sometimes we talked about it as soft skills.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they'll start families, but they won't know how to be socially supportive in a family context. So this book looks like something, but it's so much more. I already talked about how it looks like a kid's book, but it's really for everybody. It also looks like it's an education system book, but it really is a book that can impact families and workplaces as well, because it helps kids learn these social support skills. And if the adults didn't get it in their work systems or their family systems, it helps them to get a sense of what it's like to be a social butterfly for their kids, for their coworkers. So again, this looks like a kid's book, but it's for everybody. It looks like an education book, but it's also for families and work systems.
Absolutely.
And it's good socially as well, because the young parent of today very often is scrolling on the device. You see parents out with their families for meals, etc., and nobody's talking to each other. So with this using the book, they leave away the devices. It's quality time. It's that social connection.
Teresa, you just triggered a memory that I had that relates to this. I had recently a class. They, on a weekly basis, they decided they wanted to share what they're grateful for.
Yes.
So once a week, the class just goes around and talks about what they're grateful for. And a couple of the students mentioned that they're grateful for the social connections in the H2O-centered classroom.
Mhm.
And they pointed out how often they feel like they come into classrooms and it's just them there alone doing their stuff, taking their tests and going home. And the emphasis on social support and connection and discussion in the H2O-centered classroom was something they were grateful for, because they feel like they're going through the class as a learning team, not just a bunch of disconnected individuals.
Yeah, it's thriving, cultivating that academic resilience as well, Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
That 1000% checks out with everything Social Butterfly would say. And something that popped up in that just now was really cool. Dr. Brian, you said something about how you are becoming social butterfly. And that kind of helped me understand that as a mentor, you're becoming all of these superheroes. Like these superheroes exist on a page, but to bring it to life, you have to become them for yourself and for others, kind of like in the exact, in the sense of H2O. So actually, to end the training, I went back to Motivation Man, because Motivation Man can be super, he can zoom out and look at your whole life, but he can also zoom all the way in and look at all of your thoughts. And so to illustrate this to the children, the power of a thought, I said to them, let's think about two different people right now. And I'm going to read each of their thoughts. I'm going to read one thought bubble from each. And I stood in one spot and I said, wow, I'm going to work on this goal and it might be difficult, but it's going to make me a lot stronger. And then I stepped into the next position. I stepped a few feet over and I said, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard and it's just not going to be worth it. And I just can't do it. And then I said, which one do you think is more likely to succeed in their goal and be happier? And of course, they said the first one. And so it kind of helped them understand that there might be these thought bubbles that float around in their heads that are super unhelpful, that are just not getting them where they want to go and actually just discouraging them. And so the work of a mentor is to help catch those bubbles, especially when they're vocalized, or even when they're not vocalized, but when you can see it, when you see the child getting frustrated, talk about it. When you see them feeling like they can't do it, ask them why they feel like they can't do it. Give them evidence against that. So you could see some of these thought bubbles. So I can reduce my stress levels if I keep working through this. I can get a grade that I'm happy with and proud of. I can teach my friends what I've learned. Like I'm one step closer to my goal. Maybe bringing up the game of life map and kind of like marking yourself on it as you go along. Yeah, Motivation Man is really good at figuring out exactly what's going on in there, because the mind can be so, so powerful. And it can also be important in this training as a mentor to understand that giving real life examples can be very helpful, even if you have to make it up, which a lot of times you won't have to make it up, because this is the most human training I have ever come across. It's so human because it applies to so many different parts of life, and it's based on research about humans and what works for them. So if you're sitting down with a child who's getting frustrated about an assignment, you might say something like, listen, I had an assignment last week and it was really frustrating because I sat down and I just had all this stuff to do. And then I thought about how if I told myself I couldn't do it, it would only make it harder. But if I told myself that I could do it, I would feel better and I would just start doing the work. And then that example and seeing you stand there today and give your testimonial of affirmations work, that can help the child a lot. Anything to
I
add?
also think the very act of verbalizing. What's missing in today's world in many ways is the silence of the scrolling and the screening on the screen. But the very act of verbalizing something embeds it for the child, but those listening as well. It enhances their understanding and encourages them to speak more. Would you agree, Sasha?
1000%. And what do we do when we let them speak about what they're experiencing? We're giving them the spotlight, which helps them be the main character of this book. And so they're putting themselves in this book. And once you do that, you're kind of helping them build self-trust, because a book would be boring if there was no plot, if there was no struggle or mountain up and down. And so it might even help to kind of help them understand, like, listen, everyone goes through this like difficulty and then you can, overcome it. It might even help to help them brainstorm other times in their life that were difficult for them that they got over, or other assignments that felt super huge and just like a huge mountain. And then all of a sudden it was tiny because they took the steps to get there. So I think it's a lot of Motivation Man. His work is about data collection and helping children be fact finders about themselves.
One thing that came to my mind, Sasha, that again lit up my heart when I see your work here is so much of psychological therapy is looking into what I call steam draining thoughts and replacing them with steam boosting thoughts. And one of the things that really makes me sad is how often I see people and oftentimes I'll see them at young adult stage, or when I'm working in the work system, I'll see them really late in life. And it really makes me sad to see how often they have built a steam draining thought habit. And I think oftentimes, without even being aware of it, they just get what Aaron Beck used to call automatic thinking. They have such a habit of dry thoughts or steam draining thoughts that they really can't even fathom that there would be steam boosting thoughts. So one of the things that lights up my heart about this is that working with kids on this helps them to start at the very beginning of life to create a steam boosting thinking habit, so they don't have to encounter all the draining thinking that comes with not knowing how to create such a habit really early in life. So I think we're setting kids up here to create the kind of habit that's going to energize them rather than drain them really early in life, so they don't have to work on a really bad habit that's got decades worth of juice behind it by the time they start to realize, ooh, this kind of steam draining thinking is really bringing me down.
Absolutely. And something that reminds me of is I think there can be a lot of, which this is unfortunate, but there can be a lot of built up shame, especially as, you get later into life. And if you feel like you haven't accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, the great thing about this is shame is not welcome here. Shame is not welcome in these pages. What's welcome here is being proud of yourself for continuing to try, that even if you fall flat on your face, you're getting back up. So it's almost like these environments, if you're a mentor, if you're a STEAM mentor for a child, and you have 30-minute meetings or hour-long meetings with these child weekly, it might help to kind of create a list of things that are just not welcome in the meeting. So like things that are, super negative thoughts, or being really down on themselves, being ashamed. That's not welcome. Instead, it's, motivating thoughts, or turning them around, or making them feel proud of themselves. And again, a huge part of therapy is cognitive appraisal or reappraisal, flipping something into something else. So you feel scared right now about this report. That's okay. You feel scared because you care about it and you want to do well. So now they're motivated instead of petrified. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about how being a mentor, you're taking on these steps. Yes, like you're taking on the steps of STEAM, but you're also taking on kind of like a wonderful responsibility in this context of helping a child feel proud of themselves and helping them feel worthy of putting work into themselves. So yeah, so that was actually the end of the training that I did with the children. I know that we have maybe some questions to go over, or if we wanted to add anything to that.
I believe that, let's say here in Ireland now, we are heading head on into this absorption with AI in schools. I don't know what it's like for you in the States. Is it similar?
On the student side, so I can't speak to the teacher side, but on the student side, there's definitely some movement into the AI field. The way that it's kind of positioned, as far as I know, in the schools, is to not use it to do your work. So don't use it to like replace your brain, but to kind of augment your thinking, or kind of expand your thinking. It's okay. I don't fully have my opinion on it yet, but I know that I definitely think it's better to start, at least this framework without a computer. And then if needed, like if you need 10 affirmations for the child to help them boost their thinking, you can go to AI, but maybe start with more natural thinking.
Brian, in terms of training, CPD for teachers in the whole area of AI, are you aware of where it's at in the States?
AI isn't my area of expertise. Whenever I come across it, you and I talked about this a little bit in one of our previous shows. I just try to make sure that what Sasha said is firmly in mind. The way I talk about it is just like with all other technology, whether it be computers or books or phones, as long as the AI is supporting an H2O centered journey, that it's helpful to ourselves and others, then great. As soon as it starts to take people down a dry journey where it doesn't reward you and me, then I think it's not so great. So, like Sasha said, we don't want AI to become something that people just depend on. AI said this, so that's what I believe. But we want them to be able to use it just like they would use a book or computer to access the A in STEAM, different information, and then think about that information critically and see whether or not it's something that can be helpful to their STEAM in the game of life, as Sasha says in the book. And if it does, use it. If it blocks your STEAM-centered game of life playing, then throw it away.
True. Thank you.
Yeah. So Teresa, I know you've got a list of questions. We also have a growing list of questions from participants. Do you want to take us into maybe what either you or the participants are asking?
So, yeah, I just have a few questions here that I prepared. I'm particularly interested in how this model might bridge socioeconomic divides in educational access. Have you seen examples of how the H2O-centered approach has helped level that playing field for students from under-resourced communities?
Yeah, I can take that and then bounce it over to you, Sasha. One of the great things about the STEAM framework is that it helps people to become experts at the different letters in STEAM. And one of the letters that always comes to my mind when I'm talking about people who generally have less access to resources is, of course, the A in STEAM, accessibility.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed with folks who come from underserved populations is once they start to become better and better at accessibility, they become better and better at overcoming barriers to getting access to what it is that they need. So this again makes me think a little bit of Sasha mentioned how the STEAM superheroes are buddies, they work together. Social butterfly often comes to mind. When I work with folks from underserved communities, what we do is we try to create a social network of people so they can go to a variety of different people if they need books, if they need access to computers. Sometimes they might not have it in the home. If they need rides to certain places. Sometimes I work with people who are in families with maybe one car for 4 or 5 different people. And if that car breaks down, they need to have a social support network of people that say, hey, I can come on and pick you up and take you to the library with me. So one of the really cool things I think about the STEAM model is it does help to even the playing field for people who might need a little more training on how to access things and or how to cultivate the social support networks that maybe they don't have because of some of those access problems. Sasha, do you have anything else you want to say about that?
I think you really covered it. I was in thinking of that question, I was really thinking about social support, how important it can be, and just like connecting different communities no matter what, just kind of making the child feel supported and again, like main character of their story, no matter where they are in life or what location they're in, that they're worthy of, being the main character.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for that. Brian, would you like to go through some of the questions that are coming in there to you?
Yeah. So this one's for you, Sasha. Liberty Cochran, who is our H2O team leader at Appalachian State University, asks, how do you maintain your own STEAM levels, Sasha?
I love that question. This goes back to, how can you teach a child if you don't do it yourself? And so I think it's like practicing riding the bike so I can teach the child how to ride a bike. I maintain my own STEAM levels by staying organized. So I honestly sometimes will print out the water workbook and start doing it myself because I just think it's important. It's science-based. It's very helpful for me personally. And I also maintain my own STEAM levels by paying attention to what I want. I think it's easy to get caught up in oh, I want to go here, I want to go there, but really listening to my heart and figuring out what, like Enjoy Boy would tell me to do. What do I like to do? And lastly, by being patient with myself. I think it's important because, children are going to change their minds 10 times till Sunday about what they want, and that's okay, because they should be like exploring. And like it would be kind of alarming if a 5-year-old said, I'm going to be a lawyer, and then like never change their mind. And so I think it's important to celebrate the change and be patient with ourselves. And yeah, I think just practice and patience.
Yeah, that is a great answers. Okay, next question comes from Locke King, who is an H2O team member at Appalachian State University. I understand that Sasha writes predominantly children's books. Is there any interest in spreading STEAM and water literature beyond the STEAM Team Water Workbook in the future?
There absolutely is. Creating this book was one of the most fun projects I've ever done in my life. So just personally, selfishly, I would love to do more because I think it's fun. But also, I think the more I work with children and the more we do trainings like this, and I see, kind of we talk about like the buy-in to the mission, the more I see more buy-in, the more I want to do more. I think originally we had kind of had this idea of one book that was more like family centered, like you talked about, Dr. Brian, and one that was more like school centered. And so I think this book kind of covers both of those areas, but we could expand on that. We could have more children doing this in different books and kind of exploring their narratives. One thing that really comes to mind, which I don't know how to start on this, but when I was creating the book, especially in the early meetings, I was thinking about how, like, when I was younger, I would watch these TV shows about superheroes, and it always made me so excited to follow the journey. And so when I first started like making these like original drafts of what the book would be before presenting it to you and Dr. Higley, or you and Dr. Haysacker, I was thinking about it like a TV show. Like I kind of can hear their voices in my head, and I can hear the music and them running around, and oh, let's go to the classroom, and I see it as an animation in my head. So that's kind of, I know it's not a literary response, but that pops up in my head too.
And I have to say, one of the things, when I was growing up back in the Stone Ages, there was a cartoon called The Super Friends. And I think it was like Superman and Wonder Woman and a bunch of people. And they met, I think it was called the Hall of Justice, which reminds me of the place where the superheroes meet in our book. And they would just go out and do things to help people that were in trouble. So when you talk about that TV series, I think about the STEAM superheroes meeting with new kids with new kinds of STEAM issues, and each episode could be a new kid with a new issue. So not sure if that's where we'll take it, but I think we're on the same page in terms of maybe some kind of show that could really spread this to more and more kids, more and more families with more and more specific kinds of issues that STEAM could be helpful to.
Yeah, 1,000. I think 1,000%. I think just spreading it out to as many people as possible is what I'd like to do.
All right, next question is from...
I just have one question here.
Yeah.
If you were to fast forward 5 years, what would it look like? What do you envision for this STEAM, maybe for the STEAM Sidekicks program itself, and what next level implementation might we see in progressive educational settings in the future?
That's a great question. What comes to mind first is that I see this being embedded in curriculum. It's such an empowering, it's almost, I don't want to call it a no-brainer because I'm on the side of, we created this together, but to me, it almost seems like a no-brainer. Why would you not like empower children this way in such a fun and exciting way that's so directly tied to education and career aspirations? So yeah, embedded in curriculum. And then I see it in different creative channels, kind of like we talk about a TV show, or maybe different kind of like worksheet sets, or different types of trainings with children, maybe traveling around, meeting different children and doing different trainings, interactive.
So if
I'll add, Teresa, I'll add to that. Marty Haysacker and I have had a component of H2O in all of our college courses for many, many years. And we did some research on the difference between an H2O-centered classroom and classrooms without H2O. And we saw significant differences in academic self-efficacy and in learning goal-related skills, including being more likely to write out the SMART goals that Sasha discussed, and break those goals down into small, really achievable activities. So we've already been doing some research at the college level, and I could see us looking at more and more younger and younger kids now that Sasha's joined our team and started thinking about elementary, middle, and high school students.
So obviously, after the college, it moves. These students move on into the workplace and bring these good skills with them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Dr. Higley mentions the classroom environment that he and Dr. Haysacker created, where it was all H2O centered. I was a student of one of those classrooms, and so I can attest that, it really does empower you to feel more in charge of your goals. It makes you more likely to actually do them and write them down. And also, one of the educational materials for that class was actually a textbook where each chapter would start off with two different versions. I feel like it was Alice and, do you remember the other name?
Aaron and Alice. Yeah.
Aaron
I'm
and
so
Alice.
glad you remember those two characters.
It really stuck with me, especially like going into the real world now. So it was workplace based. So Aaron was in charge of a team at his workplace, and so was Alice, but they had completely different approaches. Aaron's was not STEAM centered, H2O centered, and Alice's was. And so depending on the topic of that chapter, we would see the deviation in the success rate between both. And so I think it's important, you ask about 5 years from now, and that is great to be thinking about. And also maybe it's good to think about 20 years from now, where these children that we're training are now leading teams, and they are hardwired to think about things in a STEAM centered way. So that's another, Motivation Man is having a frenzy in my head right now, figuring out how, all these reasons why I want to get these into classrooms.
And I thought I'd add, Teresa, that we also do some work with John Spence, who is a Fortune 500 business consultant.
Yes.
And he and I have been talking for quite some time about the amount of time it takes to become an expert in some of these principles. And there are a lot of different expertise models, but one that got popularized was this 10-year, 10,000 hour model. And John does most of his work in the work system. So he goes out and does trainings. And we've been talking about the difficulty in trying to help people become experts at many of the different principles that he talks about that overlap with the book that Sasha and I wrote. And one of the ways that we're working together to solve that is to start trainings as early as possible. John and I are really excited about this book because if students start thinking about this in kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school, by the time they get to him, when they're out in the work world, they will have put in that 10-year, 10,000 hours, or maybe 20 years, 20,000 hours, which makes consulting in the workplace much, much easier for folks like him and those who try to create expertise in individuals in a couple of trainings when it's really kind of going against the tide of what we've seen is necessary for expertise. And that is not a couple of trainings, but 5, 10, 20 years worth of experiences. So if they start at 5 years old, by the time they're 25, they will already been practicing this stuff for 20 years.
So it's, I suppose, so important to get it in there on the recommended curriculum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, next question. I got so excited I forgot about our list of questions. Next question is from Jessica Bumgardner, our H2O Outreach and Presentation Division Leader at Appalachian State University. She asks, how did your journey and experience with your own STEAM influence the writing of this book, Sasha?
So I was a student of STEAM not that long ago, as I was kind of talking about with like being in your classroom, Dr. Haysacker's classroom. And so I kind of saw the stark difference between the before and after, especially, in college, there's so many things pulling your attention in so many different directions, but the discipline that it takes to implement this framework is significant. And then when you kind of pair that with the results, it gives you more motivation is the basic answer of that. And I'll kind of give an example. So in writing this book, ironically, I had to create a lot of different SMART goals. I am not, so we wrote the book together, and that was like such a fun, exciting part. I had more experience with like writing than illustrating, although I had illustrated my other books. But when it came to illustrating this book, it was kind of a big job because I didn't really know how to do it, but I knew that I didn't want to hire someone to do it. I wanted to do the illustrations. I had the characters in my head and I wanted to put them on paper. And so I had a lot of SMART goals related to that. So I would kind of have like, okay, spend 20 minutes a day learning how to shadow on my drawing software. Do one illustration of a character like every couple of days for the next 3 months, and then you'll be done with the book. And so it influenced the writing of the book, but I would say it more so influenced the creative aspect of the book, the drawing. So
Yeah, that's great. And I can add that one of the things that has really inspired me, the more that I looked into these different factors, looked into the research, started using them in my own life, the fewer and fewer limitations I saw on my own life. And so one of the major reasons why Motivation Man is always in my head with this stuff is I absolutely love showing people how their irrational limitations no longer need to be limited them. So it's just a real thrill for me to see people coming into my world with a lot of I can'ts and changing those into I ams and I wills. So that's really exciting to me.
I love
All right,
that.
next question.
Sorry, I just wanted to add something to
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
So you just described something super important that I've been really into lately. I love that you said instead of I can't into I can, which is also great. I can't into I am. And that goes back to the self-trust that you don't have to trust that you'll know exactly how to do this, but you trust that you'll figure it out. And so I think that's the power we give to children when we teach them the process instead of how do you write a book report? We teach them how do you figure out how to write a book report.
Yeah, I love that. And to me, it really does map onto this idea of I'm the main character in this wonderful life. And whatever it is that I really, really want to do is the theme. And the show is about me achieving what I really want to do. And that's what this whole big show is about. I just absolutely love that idea. Okay, next question is from Isabel Van Sickle, who is our Success in Graduate School Division co-leader at Appalachian State University. She asks, which character from the book do you think is most important for children to have an understanding of, Sasha?
That is such a hard question. I think, okay, the one that comes to mind is probably Tommy Time, just because if you can like enjoy what you're doing, you can know why you're doing it, you can have the people around you, and you can have the things in front of you. But if you don't schedule out the time to do it and take away the time that's taking away from your mission activation, it's more fruitless. And so I think honestly, that's kind of why he's in the front. I think he kind of like is the ringleader of like, I'm going to clean up the clock. I'm going to set this up, and now we're all going to come in and do this together. So that would be my answer to that.
Yeah, cleaning up the clock, I think, is so important. I thought I'd add that in my work in family education and work systems, we do a time analysis where people take an average week and estimate how many activities are spent in the important, critical, and not important categories. And what I have found over and over and over again, wherever I go across the country, that the same amount of time in the not important categories is about the same. And it usually ranges between 20 and 40 hours a week on things that don't matter that much to people. They'll write things like complaining, worrying without action, gossiping, just scrolling on their phone, social media in a way that just doesn't really help them. And so the thing I say to people is that it sounds like you've taken on a part-time to full-time job that doesn't benefit you at all and pays you nothing. And I think part of cleaning up the clock is I'm quitting that part-time to full-time job of doing things that don't benefit me or others at all. And I'm going to start focusing that time and energy on things that matter most to me.
Exactly. And you brought up a great point just now. Throughout the entire training with the children, the big factor I continued to bring up and really like harp on was, why are we doing this? Why are we investing time into doing this for ourselves? It's because we love ourselves and respect ourselves. So when you quit your part-time job that pays you nothing and does nothing for you, you're doing it because you love and respect yourself. So yeah.
That's good.
Good way of putting it, too.
So I think we've got one more question, and then maybe Teresa, I'll send it back to you to wrap us up. Last question here is again from Liberty Cochran, our H2O team leader at Appalachian State University. How would you help a child who is severely lacking in one aspect of STEAM? Do you focus on boosting that one, or do you review the entire STEAM process, Sasha?
So I think a little bit of both, but I would emphasize, especially to a child, this might be a good way to describe it, that they're all friends and they all need each other. Kind of like when you work on a team in a class project, this can't happen without that. And so you definitely, I would say, start on that one, put the most time into that one, and really break that down. Maybe even create SMART goals about that particular aspect of STEAM. But yeah, kind of like something that comes to mind, children might be inclined to jump to only Enjoy Boy and think about like only what they enjoy, or go on to that, and then kind of want to stop there. That's okay, at least they have the buy-in for Enjoy Boy. But you might want to explain that, okay, but Enjoy Boy can't help Motivation Man unless we think about like why you want to do this. And Enjoy Boy, we can pick something you enjoy, but if you don't have the time to do it, he's not successfully creating like he's not activating his mission. And something that's important to think about is actually in the water workbook, I made sure to have a page, where Enjoy Boy, oh, my blur, I'm so sorry. But basically, in the pages where the children are able to kind of like lay out their goals, the example that they get is one that Enjoy Boy writes out. And his mission is to help as many kids with mission activation as possible and work well with the other STEAM team superheroes. So it might even help to bring this page up and say, like, listen, Enjoy Boy has a goal too. And so let's help him achieve his goal by including all of the STEAM team superheroes. Kind of like help to ourselves and others, even the superheroes.
Yeah, I like that. And I thought I'd add that I do something very similar. So if people have trouble with the Enjoy Boy stuff, I'll sometimes use what I call the oh, by the way technique. And if I feel like they're not really, they've still got that part-time to full-time job doing nothing that benefits them for no pay, I'll say, oh, by the way, it's much easier to enjoy things when you set aside time for those things. So if there's one central thing, I'm not enjoying my process, I also try to bring in the other characters with these oh, by the way comments.
Excellent. Thank you. So I suppose to sum up, what I love about it is the universality of the application of the concept. It can go global. It can be used anywhere. This whole notion of laying down solid foundations from the beginning, motivation and empowerment, and helping youngsters to know and create, to nurture their own self-agency from the word go. And that whole thing, as we progress into a more screen enveloped type of educational setting, this is going to become more and more important. If I were to want to introduce this into an Irish classroom, for instance, Sasha, where do I get the workbooks?
So to get the workbooks, they're actually sold in a bunch of different arenas right now. So they're on Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Amazon, Ingram Spark, which is the distributor, the base distributor. A whole bunch, I think like 20 different distributors, but I can send the link out to you in order to get that out to the classrooms. And then it would be, I would love to offer my help in getting that done. If you need any kind of resources, worksheets, trainings, I think work is so important and I'm happy to help.
So folks, if you have any further questions, I'm sure you can direct them to Dr. Brian after this recording. And Dr. Brian, what do you envisage for the future, the next step in terms of maybe doing another podcast?
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways that we can go. Whenever someone asks me what's the next step, my next step is my first answer is whatever it is, I want it to be STEAM centered for everybody. So I want to make sure that all of us co-create the next step together to make sure that we stay grounded in these STEAM principles. But a couple of things that I could see happening from here, more and more trainings like this for more and more educators, parents, administrators who want to use the term you just used, Teresa, that I absolutely love, who want to have their kids have an educational journey from the go, as you said, that is STEAM centered. One of the things that both Marty Haysacker and I have been really excited about when Sasha joined the team is we've been saying for years that our work with young adults and then older adults in family and work systems is great. You know, we're helping people change non-STEAM centered habits, and that's really rewarding. But we also thought, what would it be like to work with people who from the beginning never had these dry habits, who from the go were being trained by their parents, their educators, their family, and how to have a STEAM-centered life. And it always puts tingles. I just put tingles in myself talking about it. This idea of working with folks like you, Teresa, and with Sasha, and with the other members of the audience members here, of how to spread STEAM to more and more students from the go. So we don't have to combat dry habits. All we're doing is feeding STEAM-centered habits from the beginning of life to the end. And
So
I just absolutely love that vision.
I will wind up with the challenge, maybe, to start the journey of educating parents. So that's where it starts. They're the first educators.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so excited about this book, because when we do these trainings, one of the major aims is to send kids home with these books so they can show their parents and ask their parents to be their lifelong STEAM sidekicks.
Yes.
And that to me is so important. So you and I, Teresa, and many of our podcasts have talked about the importance of linking family systems with education systems with work systems. And we just want these STEAM principles in all three systems. So we're living STEAM-centered lives from the beginning of our lives to the end.
With that, lovely way to finish. With that, I conclude. And thank you, Sasha, for a wonderful training session. Thank you, Brian. And thank you to all who attended. And watch this space for more. Thank you.